Welcome, everybody, and we are live from the Microsoft MTC here in Malvern, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, not too far away, a stone's throw, except in the rain. Got some rain all day today. But I'm Chris Gomez, here with Andy Schwamm, and we've got Rich Ross behind the camera making all of this happen for us. Thank you for joining us on the Dev Talk Show, where tonight we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about Git, the world's most famous source control. Definitely the world's most important source control system today.
Bold.
No doubt, right? I mean, it is. And
it is probably, but that's a bold statement.
It is now. Whether we like it, whether you like it or not, it is. And we're going to talk about we'll do a little bit of maybe how you might get started with it, but also dive a little bit into solving the problems that we have with it every day at work. Every day we have a lot of us, and probably you watching, whether you're watching us live or in the future, you've had a problem and you either don't know what to do, and I'd be interested to talk about some of the ways that we might throw up our hands and give up on Git, right?
Source control, man. We've all had source control nightmares.
Well, before that's not just the Git.
No, that's why I said source control.
But absolutely, you're right. So,
so this will be a good show. This should be fun.
Yeah, so, we are here on October 16th, so we're just a couple weeks before Halloween and the end of daylight savings time here in the United States. So that means it'll be darker even earlier in the evening by our time.
Yeah.
Careful not to say that it actually changes how the sun works, because people will complain about that.
Doesn't it just doesn't the sun actually go down earlier? Yeah. I thought that's the way that works.
But you know what's great about when you fall back is this is the one day of the year where if you decide to have an all-night gaming session, you get to go from 2 to 3 p.m. and you get to go from 1 to 2 p.m. and then you get to go from 1 to 2 p.m. again.
Yeah.
So this is the night.
Is that like a big do-over?
I've actually made it a point to say, hey, we're gonna stay up all night and we're gonna finish some game.
Yep.
Because we get an extra hour. It's done that a couple times myself. So
I'll be sleeping. I'm going to be right honest with you guys.
You just go to bed.
Well, I mean, it's going to be Saturday night at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever, whenever this happens. I mean, I'll be sleeping. I'll admit that.
Okay, so this is a question that probably has almost no meaning anymore. But remember when you had to decide whether you set your clocks back before you went to bed, or did you do it when you get up in the morning?
Yes.
That question has almost no meaning now.
Because everything automatically sets.
Except maybe my microwave.
Microwaves.
And what's on your stove, probably.
Right. My car changes automatically.
But it's, your car, right?
Well,
so I got to change my car.
Oh, you do have to?
I'm sorry, I don't have an internet-connected car. But hey, our refrigerators will be doing it soon. Yeah. Certainly our cable box does. If you got a phone, your computers. So that is something that, like, for example, my daughter, I don't think will ever understand that you wake up or you do it the night before, and you went around the house and you changed watches.
Hey,
you changed.
I am just thinking, I feel like we have an obligation to the audience here to remind them, what's that thing that we've been hearing all our lives? When you change the clocks, check your smoke detectors, right?
In your smoke detectors.
Check your smoke detectors.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
We're doing all the public service.
No, you're absolutely
right. Big public service announcement.
So speaking of public service announcements, Philly.net's Code Camp is this Friday. So again, if you're watching the show live, we will be live Saturday. And we're going to have a whole room, which the schedule could still change. So we're not going to be able to announce the specific sessions right now, Rich.
Yep.
But we do have the MPR2 room, which is one of the bigger rooms.
Yep.
We're going to be having every session in there recorded, and in between even have the speakers in for interviews. But go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, so we're going to be live, but that's on the Philly.net channel.
Philly.net
right?
channel.
It's a little confusing.
So Philly, DOTNET on Mixer, Twitch, and YouTube. But at the same time, the Dev Talk Show is going to have a huge influence there. I mean, we're going to be there being the hosts of Code Camp for you online. And we're going to see what we can do about creating some extra content for you while the sessions are going on. So that's in the works.
Yeah, we'll have some fun
Nothing
with that.
I think that we can really announce, or we'll see if we get it right.
It's 3 days away. And we have not figured it out yet. Let's just be honest, right?
We got Friday night.
Right. I mean, Friday night. There's plenty of time, right?
Yeah. And what's great about that is there are a lot of great speakers will be here. There's a lot of great people who would love to, spend a little bit of time and talk about what it is they're working on, which is awesome.
Yeah, there is a great speaker lineup. I can't wait to talk a little bit more about them. So
can't say enough good stuff about Code Camp.
Yeah,
no. It's the best.
Yeah,
but and so you're going to be at Code Camp talking about Git, as a matter of fact, right? We can segue into Git.
Yeah,
right?
So I am. I'm giving a session called "Cure Your Fear of Git in About an Hour," which I've given sessions on Git for several years now, and I've taken a lot of different approaches, and I actually threw the whole thing out, and I'm taking a whole new approach again. Partially because it's something that you feel like should be easy, but then you realize how complicated the nuances of both Git and distributed source control are at all.
Mm-hmm. Now, we did a show 2 weeks ago, right, where we started talking about how we prepare to do some kind of a tech discussion.
Yeah.
How much of that conversation is still relevant to where your talk is for tomorrow or Saturday?
Yeah, actually what was great about us spending a little time talking about preparing presentations, it was fresh in our mind because that's what we've been working on for the last couple of weeks or so, is it did influence me a little bit. I actually went back and said, I have to remember, I just made this whole fuss about not making slides that were so wordy that people stopped to read them. So I went and deleted a lot of content off of slides and just tried to stick to main thoughts that can kick off conversation. I don't think there's enough hours ever for me to probably build as much content as I want. I mean, certainly you could build a talk with 200 slides where you click, 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 click. That might be a little too much.
Yeah.
For the viewer. I think that would be a good experience for the attendee.
But definitely I think there's a balance that I'm looking for where I'm trying to make it so that the slides serve as reference material.
I use the slides.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I tend to use the slide. I don't use them as reference material. I tend to use them as just stuff to keep me on track.
Right.
It's just my topics and stuff like that. I don't like when like, to me, it's a strange thing, and this happens at work all the time, by the way. People say, just distribute the slides because people might have missed it.
Sure.
And I say, you're going to get nothing from the slides.
Yeah.
Like, I don't type out my text, So anyway.
So we'll talk about it a little tonight. The viewpoint that I'm adding is the idea that, no, I'm not trying to make the slides read like a book, but at the same time, I would like for the person who maybe didn't catch what I said, and you heard it, you sat in the audience, you even watched what we did on screen, and it was fresh in your mind for those 30 seconds, and then you go home and you sit down and you go, what was he saying again? So it's an angle of, if I went back to those slides,
and it's helpful.
That command line is right there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I remember him talking about that.
That kind of stuff is great. You want to have those key.
So I'm trying to say, like, to do this, here's the command line, and then here for more, click here, and it increased the workload.
Yeah.
Because I will say that my technique to keep my presentation workload down is be very, very demo concentration, so that, like, the demo is the thing.
You know what we should make sure we do? And I want to get onto Git, right? That's what we're here to talk about. But what we should do is we should have a link underneath, like in the YouTube archive, when when we record some of these things, links to someone's slide, like how do we get the accompanying slide deck,
right? Or
the accompanying, whatever other materials we want. It would be good if we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that goes. So there is a GitHub site for the Dev Talk Show. Philly.net has one as well, and I think that the idea is if we can get presenters to take a moment and push things there, that's helpful. Or if they give us their own link, it's fine too.
GitHub. So there's a GitHub link. What's GitHub?
Yeah, so GitHub is what a lot of people assume is Git. Right?
A lot of people do.
Yeah,
that's a good starting point.
It absolutely is true. So GitHub was a if I remember the story correctly, and I didn't actually prepare for this at all, but I think the history of it is that a couple guys said, what if we automated Git with some Ruby on Rails code?
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure that's the story. And at the time, what's amazing is that GitHub wasn't the first or even the most popular.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what that name was.
Microsoft had Codeplex, but I would say that the non-Microsoft folks, it was still an age where it's like, well, I'm not going to use that. A lot of popular projects were on, and this is what you're going to remember, we're on SourceForge. Remember SourceForge? But I think the problems that Codeplex and SourceForge didn't solve was they were a great place for me to go look at code as a consumer or as a viewer, as a reader. But in order to be a contributor, because let's not forget the source control of the time was things like Subversion or perhaps CVS or maybe I don't think we're quite into Mercurial yet. I think we're a little early for that. They were systems that were centralized, and so therefore for me to contribute, I would have to be given some kind of rights. Now, these systems had patch systems. You could submit patches, but nothing quite nailed the ease of use and the ease of accepting outside work as GitHub with what they invented, the pull request.
As Git.
Yeah, well, GitHub invented the pull request. That is not a Git feature.
So you know things.
Yeah, that is not.
I don't know how you know these things, but that's good.
So that's not a Git feature, but a lot of people think it is. Right?
Yeah.
But it was such a great idea that the word pull request is synonymous with source control now, and every source control platform has pull
PR,
request.
as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
right?
PR is
just
common.
PR.
Yeah, not a Git feature. It turns out, and
but it is now a Git feature.
No, it is still not a Git feature.
So if you're saying if you use Git outside of GitHub,
as Linus intended, which we could talk a little bit about, Linus Torvalds, right? Linus Torvalds invented Git. And I often tell people, if you wonder why Git is the way it is Git is the source control Linus invented for Linus.
Right.
To solve his problem, which was managing the Linux kernel.
Right.
It turns out that solving that problem helped a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Just maybe not quite the same way. So Git has a concept of patches. You can create a patch and then I could email it to you, or we could have a Git daemon running /service, and you would just connect to me the way you connect to GitHub, and I might give you the rights to push to me because I trust you. That was his intent. That was the intention. And so pull requests were a GitHub idea, which we needed it. We needed it because do you run a Git server? I don't run a Git server. Like none of us run it.
I have one here on my phone.
Like we don't run Git servers. It's not convenient. That would be tying us back down to machines again. And GitHub frees us from that.
I don't know. Right? Again, you're leading this conversation. I don't know how far you want to go in this topic, but I remember when I was first hearing about Git, it was all about there is no server necessarily needed. It's this distributed thing. And everyone syncs to everybody else. And it sounded very like magical, right?
Yep. Definitely the philosophy of Git.
Right.
All repositories are the same.
But no one really uses that model.
Because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
In the end, you have to pick something. I'm going to say this, and again, if you're Linus Torvalds, then I apologize. But for the rest of us,
I don't think he's watching.
You pick something to be your
source
golden vault.
Yeah, your source of truth or whatever, right?
Right. We get our code right there. That's the truth.
Right.
I'm allowed to blow my machine away. I'm allowed to mess up on my machine. That's fine. So it's a little bit off of the intention. The intention was absolutely is that I'm running Git, you're running Git. I like what you've done. I'm going to pull your code. That still limits us to being people we know. And what GitHub did so well, I think, with the pull request model, and which we're going to talk about, is it allows me to run an open source project and accept a contribution from someone I've never met.
Right.
Just based on looking at the contribution itself.
Yeah, so if someone's coming to Git new today, right, it doesn't matter that pull request was there or wasn't.
None of that matters. That's not important.
Right. So, because I want to try to focus on so people are coming, they're watching the show maybe because they're like, what's Git and why should I be using it?
Right. So the easiest answer about why you should use it is because everyone else is using it.
That's what I say at work, by the way.
Which is it. And that's not a negative or a positive. It just is.
Right. It's time. Microsoft. One of the things people at work ask me all the time is, well, why not? We're an Azure DevOps shop, right? And before that, we were TFS. And people would say, well, why not just stay with TFS version control, right? It's a good version control, and it is a good version control, right? And my answer is, and I don't know if this is politically correct or whatever, but at Microsoft, they put their important repos in Git.
I'm pretty sure Windows is on Git now.
It is.
Right.
After they made some changes so it could support
I'm not saying TFVC, right, Team Foundation Version Control, isn't a good system.
Yeah.
But I'm simply saying if they're not using it, that tells me that maybe it's time for us to move on. And so we're moving on at work. We've been moving on for a while, and we're still trying to get there, by the way. But I think it's one of those things, like, it's time.
Yeah, and it tracks code or handles your code and your changes differently, right?
It does do it differently, right? And I think more effectively, but that's an important.
Well, and so, right, and that's what maybe we can try and talk about. Is
tell
what's
us
the difference.
How is it different? Yeah.
So I think if you've never used Git before, we can show you what and you're a Windows user, then I think there's a couple things you should know. And so on my machine, what I did is I brought up the home of Git.
Oh, hang on.
And it'll be up here in a second. So this is the home of Git. It's git-scm.com. You can get your Windows download here. You can also get downloads for other clients or other systems. So like if I go to the downloads page here, I can see there's Mac OS.
I always like to do this.
Mac OS X. Yeah. And then there's Windows and there's Linux. So you can get it for any system. I think and I think what we'll do just for the purposes of this talk is stick with what I think in 2019 is your options as a Windows user.
Okay.
And the reason why is this story's gotten easier. A couple years ago, this was actually like a story, but it's gotten better. For one thing, you can just download Git for Windows, which you could have done from this page, but Git for Windows has its own homepage at gitforwindows.org. You can download this. There's nothing wrong with doing it. And then you just keep up with it, right? Today, the current version is 2.23. What's important is that you have at least 2.17, what's considered version 2 of that. And we'll talk about that in a second. Some Windows users, and this might be you and it might not be, like Chocolatey. So you could get the Chocolatey package.
Yeah.
That works. You can get that.
Right.
Or you can also, if you're going to put Visual Studio on the machine, then you can say, Visual Studio, I want you to manage it. It's already showing here on the right.
Git for
Windows.
Windows.
But as I drop down a little bit, I think it's in this long list.
Somewhere in there.
Here we go, Git for Windows. So if I check Git for Windows here in Visual Studio, then not only does Visual Studio install it for you, in the case of an important security vulnerability, they have shown that they will update it for you as part of Visual Studio.
That's cool. Now, you mentioned being on at least a certain version of Git.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to put Git on my machine. I mean, I have it already, but I'm putting Git on my machine, and I'm connecting to a Git server to get, clone things and do pull requests. Does it matter the version between them? I mean, you don't have to be in sync 100%, right?
You don't. However, I think, and so that's a great question, because I remember there was a specific change that happened in Git, and it might have been to force clients to take this remediation that's on the screen right now. In May of 2018, there was a very important Git security vulnerability that had to be remediated immediately. So along with my discussion about how Visual Studio takes care of it for you, this blog post is basically saying, if you have Visual Studio, there is a Visual Studio update out there right now that is fixing this, that they deployed a Visual Studio update to get you on this version.
This was
last
over a year ago.
Right, but
So
the key was I'm pretty sure
yeah.
that a short time after this, if you didn't have at least this version and then you tried to use something like GitHub, it would fail.
Okay. So that could happen again.
I believe that I'm right about that. I might be wrong about that history. There have been points in time where the world kind of had to catch up. But 217 is pretty good. And the way I can find out, so I'm here I just opened a command prompt. That's all I did. And I said git, and I could do -- version. And it just so happens that that's the exact version I'm talking about. 217 for Windows, that second release.
Yep.
That's it. So the latest and greatest is this 223, but it doesn't mean that you have to be on it.
Yeah. So it doesn't really change that much, I guess.
No, although if we do get a chance to talk about it, 223 is one of the more interesting releases in a while. I don't know that it's important to get into
let's get into let's
talk about. So for one thing, and now you're going to get some opinion. A lot of people, I think, still believe after they install Git for Windows, they'll type Git and they'll say, "Oh, I guess I have to use this Git bash thing."
Yeah, I see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's probably been about 3 years now that my advice to Windows users has been just close this and don't look back. There's nothing, it's not broken. There's nothing wrong with it. It does mean that you are in a like Linux emulation of sorts, a Linux terminal emulation. And so if you have trouble navigating that, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. It turns out that for the longest time, that emulation, that msysgit terminal was one of the most reliable SSH agents for Windows, but it meant you had to live in there. So that was kind of frustrating.
So you've already said you don't think we should use it.
I don't think we need it anymore. So, and the number one reason why is because we have, if you're using GitHub or you're using any major service, we have Windows credential authentication now with HTTPS, and it is more secure than you think. A lot of people still to this day will say like, well, if you're not SSH, then your password's being stored in the clear. That's not true at all. Windows users, it's being stored in your Windows credential manager. It is not being stored in the clear. It's just it's in the same security model as like your passwords.
Okay.
So any reason that someone gives you that says, no, you got to be in Bash because it's the only way to do X, it's just not true anymore.
Okay.
So I don't use it. I just like the command line, and PowerShell is fine as well. We're not going to look at it all today, but some people like the PoshGit extension, which adds some extra jazz to the PowerShell command line. And it's awesome. Turns out I don't have it installed on this system, so I couldn't even show it to you.
Okay.
I wanted to. But so what I tend to do is I tend to have just a source folder. You don't have to. It could be down in your users. It could be users and your username, and it could go on from there and there and there.
But you like to keep it at the... I mean, I keep it down at a lower level, but I still have a folder called source.
Right.
The point is, you like to keep it at the root, and that's a good habit because of those long names sometimes.
Smaller paths.
Yeah, smaller paths.
I don't have a better reason than that. Just smaller paths.
Well, I hear a good reason is you find yourself going to it a lot.
Yeah.
So why make it complicated, right?
It's true. It's true. And then but
it can go anywhere, and important because in your work environment, you may have certain rules as to where you can put things. They may want you putting things on server. There's a lot of different, reasons why you would put different things in different places, but you can put it anywhere.
And so let's take a look at something on GitHub here. So if we go to just github./.net, this is the home of .net. Now, I don't think we want to take a massive repository here, but here's the home of their CLI, of the .NET CLI. Okay. So, and this is for somebody, if you're totally new to Git, I don't think this is we're going to be able to suffice as like complete intro tutorial, but that's fine. How do I work on this? And what does it even mean to work on it? So I'm here in GitHub. This kind of looks like a file system, right? Does it feel like that to you? This is their file system.
Yeah.
I can go into folders. And here's some C#.
Yeah.
Here's some C# code.
So this is a repo.
Yep. This is a repository.
Right?
Yep.
And this is someone's source code. It happens to be Microsoft.
Right.
But it's someone's source code. Mm-hmm. And we want to have access to it.
If you want to work on it,
we want to work
on it. I can't work on it easily in here in the web page. I mean, that's a whole other discussion.
Right? Yeah.
But you can't.
I want to get in and I want to get Visual Studio going.
So what you do is you clone it.
Clone.
The concept of clone, and the reason why we use the word clone is because I'm actually going to get a copy of this repository on my machine to work on here.
Right.
And
but the button says clone or download.
Okay.
Why wouldn't I just download it? Wouldn't that be easier?
I could just download this zip.
Yeah.
And I could just put it up on my system. But the nice thing about cloning, and also the confusing thing about cloning, is Git does some things for you without even telling you that make it easy for you to begin the process of contributing back or keeping up with changes that happen while you're working.
Yeah, synchronization stuff, if you want to call it.
Right.
Generically.
And you don't get that if you don't use Git.
Right.
I don't even need Git to download the zip.
Exactly.
Don't even need Git. I can just do that right now.
Right. But it's actually easier to not download the zip.
When you get used to it, right. So I'm in the habit of grabbing this URL. Now, I could pick open in desktop because I have GitHub desktop installed, and it will automatically clone it down to using GitHub desktop, but it essentially does the same thing.
Yeah, it's good to see what it really does.
But let's stick with command line.
Yeah, I like that.
So from command line, if I say git clone, so git, this is the piece of software that makes everything happen, Git.
Okay.
And if you just type Git,
I can see all the different commands.
Your eyes blur a little bit because you go, oh my gosh, what is all this stuff?
Right.
So but git clone is the command.
Yep.
With with the URL
Okay.
in HTTPS format.
Do I need to say where I want to put that?
If I don't,
Yeah.
then by default, what Git will do is put it into a folder called CLI, because the repository itself, even though it's in this .NET, the owner of it is .NET, but the repo itself is called CLI.
Okay, which is, to me, right off the bat, I think this is where people have like a question.
Yeah.
It's like, do I need to make a folder called CLI, or will it make a folder? And you're saying it will make a folder.
You
called
can,
CLI.
I think, as a second argument, and you can tell I'm out of practice doing it, is you can say anything you want here, and it'll make that folder.
Right. Okay.
But
That works.
I'm pretty sure that is but you can tell that's how out of practice. This is generally
You
what I do.
don't need to. This is generally what you do. Right. So like, boom, here we go. And now
And then a bunch of stuff happens.
It's just slamming down that whole repo, right? Bringing it down to you.
Yeah, and it's, this is a repo with a fairly long history, so it's taking a little bit longer than normal. But in the end, it actually didn't take that long at all.
No, I mean, if you think about it, that's pretty fast.
That was pretty quick. And so now I have to switch.
So wait, why does it matter? That's interesting. You said it's got a history, but I don't care about the history. I just want the current. Aren't we just getting the current version?
By default, you receive the entire repository,
Right.
and you could go forward and backward in time and look at the code at any point that you wanted.
But it was so small. With all that history.
Git is
I'm
best.
playing hey, wait.
Git is best at text files. That's what it's great at.
It's great
But
at
you know what? Most source control systems are.
Right.
So I'm not going to try to say oh my gosh, it was revolutionary to us in source control.
Yeah, sure.
Text has been we're pretty good at packing and creating deltas for text. We've been good at that for a long time. The royal we of developers, right? But I think, so Git takes advantage. As long as you're just doing text files, that you do great. You'll hear some tips about if you have a project with really large assets. Well, that's why, and I believe Microsoft was part of this, was creating Git LFS, which we're not going to, it's totally out of scope for what we're talking about now, but it's a way to keep those large files out of your repo, but then still act like they are.
Yeah, yep.
It's actually something I kind of want to dive into. Really great if you're producing Windows, or who a huge game developers. Big,
they have a lot of
important,
assets, right?
Huge videos and images and meshes that they just, it's not source code.
Okay, so what do we got now?
So, if you're not used to command line, even that might be foreign, that I've switched to the CLI folder. I changed directory to CLI.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And half the reason I do that is because, and I guess I could have done it, is I've sort of got this down. Is start dot.
Do we want to look
open?
I don't want to mess up your mojo here or whatever.
Fine.
Do we want to look at the file, the Explorer, and see? Is that okay? I thought you were going.
So start opens Explorer. Exactly. I learned that a long time ago, and so from here I could have said start CLI, and it says okay. Let me just open it up in Explorer, and let me make these icons a little bit bigger. All right.
Yeah.
So if I quickly take a quick look back at their setup. So .NET CLI, we were talking about. Okay, here's a documentation.
That looks a little grainy. Is there anything we can do? Do you see that? That looks a little grainy. Rich had his headphones on.
I wonder if it's just.
Is that just?
I wonder if it's really just me, because we don't look too bad.
Yeah, we're pretty clear. That's why I'm wondering if it was something that we can do. It's okay.
It might just be my
calling out our technical problems, and now everyone's gonna. Now they didn't notice it was grainy. Now they notice it is.
Right. It could even be the resolution that I've chosen.
I think it's the resolution.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we can see there's a documentation folder here in theirs, and then in here it is right here. So I have a copy of this, and I can begin working. I get this one extra little folder, .git, and you could venture into here, but you don't have to. Just this is everything that Git needs to manage what's going on here. It actually has the entire history in here.
Yeah.
And then it's got some text files that it uses to tell itself what it's in the middle of doing, or what are you doing, in fact. So let's see. I don't think we're actually going to work with this repository, but what I thought we might do is the Dev Talk Show has a GitHub site at github.com/the Dev Talk Show. And it turns out that we have a, let's see, the Dev Talk Show. we have a repository with the website that we were working on.
Yeah.
And this is it. And actually, I'm not even 100% sure if this is completely up to date or not. But I guess it doesn't really matter. I cloned this from our Azure Repos repository.
Okay.
Because this happens to be in Azure Repos, which is just another source control host. Anybody can sign up for it, right? And free private repos. And because a lot of people, Bitbucket and GitHub have free private repos now as well. So here's the interesting.
Wait, you just said Bitbucket.
Yeah, so Bitbucket is another.
Yeah.
Bitbucket, like GitHub, is another.
So you don't have to use GitHub.
You don't.
To use Git.
Bitbucket is pretty, I think is pretty popular. And then I think another pretty big name is GitLab.
Right.
Now, the key about these are like, I hope I'm not saying this too wrong, is these are like server products, both in the cloud, but also you could buy them and bring them in-house and host them locally. Yeah, that goes for GitLab, that goes for Bitbucket, that goes for GitHub. You could do that. Okay. And as you can see, the feature adds is they say, well, look, we're offering you Git, but then we're also offering you this issue tracking and a wiki and you can manage your projects. So they differentiate each other on those kinds of features.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
So again, I'm diverging off a little bit, but so we're showing all this great stuff, but a lot of people say, well, we want to use Git, in Azure DevOps. Does that mean when I connect to Azure DevOps, I'm piping my code's going into GitHub?
No. So Azure. Okay. So when you say you want to use Azure DevOps, you mean that you might want to use it for the build side of it.
Yeah, we use Azure DevOps, and we want to have our source control in Azure DevOps, right?
You could. So Azure DevOps has a feature called Repos, or a product called Repos, Azure Repos, and which we've even shown on this show.
But it's Git.
I mean, it's just Git.
But it's not GitHub. I mean, it's another place to put that.
It's just exactly. It's just a different GitHub repo. I'm wondering if I can quickly get to it. We've shown it on the show. We talked about it last week because we have a project. Here it is, our The Dev Talk Show project that happens to be internal, and we happened to put it in Azure Repos.
Right. And it's the same thing, though.
It's still Git.
It's still Git.
It's just this interface is a little different. But it's still Git, and
same commands work. You still clone everything you do. It's all the same.
And what's interesting about that is
so Git's almost like a protocol, if you could call it, or something like that.
It is a lot like a protocol. Yeah. So if I look at the Dev Talk Show, let's see. There's a clone. Here's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to look at. I can't do much with this. Actually, I can copy it. So let's see what does that look like. This is the URL to clone from there. And I just want to show it to everybody. Okay, the Dev Talk Show at dev.azure.com.
Yeah.
So, I have this Git repo of this project, and this is probably getting a little too far ahead. But if I say Git remote, I'm asking Git. I'm asking it, what was the origin or the originator of this? Where did you clone it from? And it turns out you can see it's that address.
Yep.
So when we talked about what cloning does for you, cloning besides copying the source code down, they don't tell you this. Git never tells you this. Git also makes a remote, which is just a concept for a server somewhere else, and it sets it for you called origin. This is just a convention. And it says that way, if something changes up in that origin, then I could fetch those changes. Or if I want to contribute back, I could push those changes. And it's even hinting at that, right?
Yeah.
You can do crazy things like say, for fetch, I want to come from here and I want to push there. Let's be honest, I've never had a use case for that. I'm sure some very smart people can think of some.
Reason why, yep.
I would say let's avoid getting too crazy there. I did something a little weird here where I gave myself the ability to push to another source. But again, I don't necessarily want to confuse, because it's very easy to get off on that tangent.
Yeah,
when you clone a repo, and let's go back to the CLI one just to look. If I do, remember, all I did was git clone. That's the only thing I've done. That's it. It made this origin for me.
Right.
Remote is a command that says, show me what remotes you know about. What other servers do you know about? I hesitate to use the word linked, because I used to use that in the past, and I think it confused
people. It's not
people.
100% accurate to say.
People would be confused because they would start to wonder, like, well, if a change happens up there, does that mean it just gets transmitted down to my machine?
Yeah,
no.
Right.
Nothing happens without you saying so. If I never communicate with that server again using Git, then and the CLI team went on for years and years and years, I would not see a single bit of their changes.
Okay.
That's a key tenet of Git. Nothing is forced on you. And when you commit code, the exact code that you have written is what gets committed. In other source control systems, this doesn't say anything negative about them. If you and I were using TFS and we both took a checkout, a working copy at the same time, and you worked on file A and I worked on file A and you committed, which they call a check-in. It creates a change set. Mm-hmm. And you changed a function in your code in a totally different place from where I worked, such that TFS has no problem merging the work. When I merge, my change gets merged, your change comes down, and nobody tells me. So that's because it's centralized source control. This is decentralized source control. So if I never talk to the CLI repo again, if I never do a git fetch, then they can do whatever they want and it doesn't affect me. In fact, I could say git remote delete origin. I think I got that right. Maybe it's git remote remove. Git remote remove origin. And I have effectively disconnected.
Yeah.
Now I have nowhere to push to.
But you could always add another.
Yeah, I could add it back.
Add another.
Could add it back.
Yeah. All right. So what do we do with Git now? We've got a repo, or what do you want to do? You want to take that repo?
I think, and so I don't know. This is something I thought about. Is that we know that we have the Dev Talk Show here in our own Azure repos, but we also have a public GitHub site. And a lot of times people ask me, I already have a Git repository. How do I get it up to GitHub?
I have a local repository.
Yeah, I've already got a repository. And it could be because you took it from another place or because you started your own project. And one of the things you did when you started your project is say my new project. And you presumably you worked on it for a little while and then you typed git init, which basically says, make me a Git repository right here.
Oh.
So you've done that work, and that could be a case, or it could be what I'm trying to do, which is essentially move it from one place to the other. And you say, well, wait a second, how do I get this into GitHub? Where's the upload repository button, right? And it's not here. I'm surprised that I'm not signed in, honestly. So I may have to do that, Rich. Yeah, I may have to do that real quick. No, I should.
I think he wants you to switch off.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to switch off of me real quick.
Yeah.
Because I did intend to sign in before we. Who knows what happened there?
Yeah. So obviously we don't want to see what Chris is typing, so we're switching away, and you get to look at our beautiful faces for a minute while he does some typing. And Rich, put your face in there too. And look, now we got all three of us. You know, I'm going to take a minute. Remind viewers, we got also Tech Bash coming up. And I just thought we could throw in like a little commercial there for Tech Bash, which is coming up. And if you go to techbash.com, you can see our schedule and find all kinds of information. It's November 12th to 15th up at the Kalahari. And if you happen to be watching this before then, still time to get tickets, still time to do that. And you're ready, right? You ready to get back?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah,
we're good. So I am signed in.
Before we do that, we'll say hi to friend of the show, Meg. She's in the chat room there.
Hey.
Friend of Philly.net, friend of the show. Definitely really latched onto what we were doing early. And she has been working super hard learning to be a full stack developer.
Oh, really?
And going to, participating in local events. She really, really supports different, besides the Philly.net community, she's super supportive of the developer community. So everybody definitely, she should follow her on Twitter. Honestly, she's going to be an up and coming name in our community.
Put her Twitter handle in there, and I'll follow her.
So
ahead, Meg, put it in.
So in any case, so you know what? There's no repositories here in the Dev Talk Show. So what is the Dev Talk Show? It's an organization, which is a GitHub concept that the three of us own. So what it means is that we can act in it as if it was our own account. So that's something kind of unique to it's not unique to Git, but there is my user account in Git, which is at my username, so github.com/spaceshot. 54 repositories in here. I bet you half of these I could probably throw away. Right? I mean, how many junk repositories have I started?
Yeah.
Or I've just started cloning stuff like, hey, I cloned different projects that I'm interested in taking a look at. Well, actually, the technical term there is fork, but that's okay for right now. So, as you can see, I've already brought the Dev Talk show over from Azure repos at some point. So,
well, that's into Chris Gomez.
Right, it's into the Spaceshot account.
Spaceshot, yeah.
But this could be your own account too.
Sure.
And there's no upload a repository. At least I don't think there is. There is an import repository, which I've actually never tried. Okay, you got to have a URL from somewhere else. So that's not going to work because it's on my system. So that means I really do have to create a new repository. I could check this button, or I could pick new repository up here where this plus is that lets me see a quick menu. And I'm going to name it the same exact thing, TDTS.
You use, what's the standards there? You know, like some people do uppercase, lowercase, spaces, dashes. Do you have any preference to naming?
I think I don't like to do that.
Well, yeah.
I know some people kind of like to say, I'm just going to go all lowercase for anything.
Yeah,
in fact,
I see a lot of that.
That might be a lot of what Microsoft is doing.
With dashes in between words, I think, right?
Sure, you could do underscores.
Or no, I thought they used...
You could do dashes.
People use dashes?
These things are all allowed.
Yeah, they're allowed, right?
I think what ends up happening is you're probably greatly influenced by your programming languages. And
can't use that.
And here in oh, that's right, because I was going to make it.
Oh, you're on Spaceshot, yeah.
Oh no, I don't have a whole lot of organizations and stuff that I'm a part of or anything, right? That's not true.
Maybe you got a backspace one and type.
Is that really true?
Like that.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Okay, yeah, you were right about that. Look at that. We had to get it to check again.
Meg says repo-name-example.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do use dashes. We could look through Microsoft repos, and I have a feeling that there are a lot of lowercase, especially but then I can think of a lot of other places. I wonder if it's team specific. I can think of teams that might be more This would be called camel case, right?
Well, no, not if you have dashes.
Well, no, what I did.
Yeah, sorry, what you did
because I did capital letters for each new word.
Right.
Which is a very C# thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? We're very C# oriented. I see more on GitHub lowercase, which is a very JavaScripty, I think, more kind of thing to do or whatever. And you know, it's fine. But the point is, it's up to you.
It is up to you. And I've never complained about, like, I've never said, oh my gosh, I'm upset that they did that. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, Meg's saying, you know, model it after the language or the project style, right? So if we're doing a .NET project, makes sense to probably follow the .NET type of naming standard, maybe, you know, camel case. And if you're doing a JavaScripty thing, maybe, you know, it's not, right? So do what you want. Anyway,
dash is preferred to underscore. She's not wrong. You don't have to hit the shift key. She says dashes are preferred to underscores because they're easier to type.
Definitely.
So I could put in a description if I wanted. I could say the Dev Talk Show's public website.
I hope there's nothing in this public website that's like any private keys or anything. I don't think we have any of that in that repo, right?
It's not my code.
Yeah, I don't remember. So in any case,
so I should take a look.
I'm pretty sure it's good, or we can just delete the repository. So at the bottom it says skip this step if you're importing an existing repository. Why? Because they will put in a README, and they will put in, if you'd like, they'll go ahead and put in this readme.md, which is just a markdown file, a way for you. And the nice thing about most of these sites, and GitHub actually kind of invented this, is any markdown file named README in a folder, they'll just render the markdown so that you can just view it. It almost like makes documentation in place.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. They're saying skip this step if you're importing an existing repository. That's fine. I'll agree with them and say create the repository.
Well, wait, what step did you skip?
Saying that I'm not going to have it create an initial commit with a readme.md or a gitignore or a license.
I was going to say, so gitignore, you didn't mention what that is.
Yeah, right? So I mean, gitignore is a concept. The gitignore concept is where, let's just look at our gitignore in Dev Talk Show, because that's probably the easiest thing to do, is it's a concept that says to get on your machine that the files that are indicated by this format, these aren't going to be committed. You're not committing these.
Right.
As a Visual Studio user, I think for a long time we used to just remember not to commit like the sudo file. And then if you were lucky, or if you used something like TFS, it knew that. Or if you used Visual SourceSafe knew that. But if you went to an organization maybe using a source control system and they didn't have an ignore process, then you had to remember not to check this stuff in. And the list for Visual Studio users, this is a generally standard Visual Studio git ignore. It's pretty long. And I think it's because we kind of come from a heritage of files that they're like maybe intermediate, and you don't need to check them in.
So if I seem distracted, I'm just quickly scanning through the repo to see if there's anything interesting in there, which wouldn't have been following a best practice to have some sort of, but since we knew it was private, I might have just done that because we were in a hurry.
Right.
But since that website doesn't really connect to any databases or anything like that, there's really nothing in there. So I think, I think it's all okay. Yeah. I just wanted to double check that real quick.
So I have this repository up in GitHub now, right? And it's got nothing, and I can tell because in the code tab, it's kind of like begging me to get started. Yeah,
that's how you know there's nothing in there.
Yeah, and it says, well, look, you could create a new repository. It gives you everything you need. You could create a new repository. A repository's got to have at least one file, so that's why they're using this code here to create a file real quick. Or you could push an existing repository, which is what I'm going to do. So here from the command line, I think I did delete the last remote, right? Oh no, it's here. Okay, so I'm going to add yet another remote.
You deleted the remote from the other
the CLI project, yeah. So I'm going to create a remote here, which is basically me telling, and it's important to say this, on my machine, not on Andy's, not on Rich's. GitHub doesn't care what I'm doing here.
Right.
I am saying git remote add, and let's go ahead and call it GitHub.
Yeah, name the remote, right?
Let me get rid of this other one. I'm going to remove this one just to get it out of the way.
That's a good idea.
Oh, just to get it out of the way.
Now, while you're doing that, I think a lot of times people are coming from other source control models, right? And in it used to be you had these very firm bindings to a
specific server. Yeah.
But you couldn't have multiple bindings. Nope. That was not a thing. So just to be clear, in this case, you're theoretically having multiple bindings,
and that's fine.
And that's fine. And that just goes to show how flexible this is. Now, that could lead to some real confusion, by the way.
Right.
But let's leave that.
But I have to tell my local. So this is my version of the TDTS public web that I cloned from Azure repos. It's an independent first-class repository on my machine.
Yep.
If I don't do something to say, there's a remote out there that I want you to be aware of, it doesn't know. So I have to say git remote add. And I'm going to call it GitHub, but I do need this URL. I do need this URL. So you can name a remote anything you want. The standard is that origin is going to be set for you when you clone. So I'm going to call it GitHub. I could call it anything. I could call it Joe. I could call it Eat It Joe's.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
GitHub makes sense.
But I got to provide that URL. This is the same URL I would have used to clone from GitHub.
Yeah.
Same exact URL. So now that I've done that, I can see it in my list.
Yep.
And now I can say git push. And we're often used to saying git push.
Yeah.
Right? But
not if you just come into this for the first time.
Come to us.
So what does push mean?
Git push is to push your commits or your changes to a repository.
And so in this case, your changes
is everything.
It was everything.
Yeah. So it's not going to fight with me because it has nothing to compare it to. But I got to tell it that I want it to go to this other remote, git push GitHub.
Right, because by default, it's going to go to origin.
By default, everything goes to origin.
And that's where this is going to get a little weird, I think, because I think if I'm understanding why you're doing this, in the future, you would want origin to be GitHub. We could swap that out. We could fix that, right? Because you would want to sort of default this thing to be GitHub eventually. You're doing this for the reason of sort of taking it from the private and putting it in the public. But if we're going to do that, we would work on it in public and
Yeah, I mean, you could. It doesn't have to be in GitHub anyways. But the point is that now you see code up here, and a lot of people get stuck in like they'll literally get stuck in that. I've got a Git repository somewhere, but it's not in GitHub, so I don't know what to do. We'll move it there.
So what I think is really, really cool here, and I think it's worth spending another minute on here. So a lot of times people are used to saying, well, if I take my repo from one source control provider to another or something like that, I'm losing my history, right? So you just cloned it from one source, and now you just pushed it up to a different server, if you will, right?
Yep, it's over in GitHub.
And if we look at this, not just the files, but we can actually see the changes.
Yeah.
And that's strong. I mean, that's like the kind of feature that makes, I think, the Git model really awesome, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. So I'm just seeing if both, interesting, because I don't think the master branch made it over. I didn't mean to create that. It looks like I just did.
What'd you just do? Oh.
I did not mean to do that.
What do you mean the master did branch? Weren't we in the master branch?
I didn't mean to do that. I goofed there.
What'd you do wrong?
Well, when I pushed up, I was on a second branch, so that was the only branch.
You were on a branch from the old one, so this is very confusing. This is a little confusing now, right?
Okay, so.
But no, I've got it now. I think what's happened here is I think that this repository I think it believes that the main branch is this DNC3 Azure Pipelines because it's the first one I pushed up there. I'm pretty sure that's true.
Oh.
Yep. So there's a concept in Git called a default branch. And when you create a repository, by default, it's going to be master.
Yeah.
But there's nothing special about that branch. You could delete it. First thing you could do in your Git repository is delete it. Maybe you just don't like the name. And because it was the first branch I pushed up to GitHub, pretty sure that GitHub said, well, I guess that's your default branch.
That must be what they wanted to call it. Yeah.
But it's very easy. You go into settings and you switch it, update it. And then it tells you like, oh my gosh, you know, the reason why this is important is because somebody goes and does git clone now, and the first branch they're going to work on is master, and maybe you didn't intend that. Well, you know, are you sure you know what you're doing? And it's like, yeah, I messed up, so I know what I'm doing.
So the last minute or two we could pretend didn't happen.
Yeah,
because you should have been on the right branch.
I wanted to be. I meant to push master up there.
Yeah,
but yeah. So
ooh. Rename.
Oh, I could rename. Yeah, renaming brand. We can talk about branches. That might be the next best thing to do. I mean, so
thanks for screwing up.
No, it's true. When you create a new Git repository, master is created by default for you. And when you create a new Git repo, a GitHub repo, or any of these services, and you go ahead and let it create a README, then it gives you your first commit, and that's going to be on master. And then what you'll do is this is the other workflow. The other workflow is make the repository up in your source control provider, clone it down, and then throw your work in there and send that up.
Yeah, I wanted to see how far we get along with this, and then look at some different scenarios because I think in the real world you go back and you say, well, how do I want to do this? Like, or in Visual Studio or in VS Code or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe we can come back to that.
Well, I think a lot of people like to work in Visual Studio, right? So I think very quickly what we can see here is that you saw me working from command line. Okay, and so now for the rest of this, we're working from command line, and git status is a command I can use to find out. And this is a concept that takes a little bit of work, is what branch am I on? That has a meaning. The branch that you're on, that means something. But I don't know that we have to, when we do our next commit, we can talk about that. I think that'll make more sense then. So git status is telling me that I'm on the master branch. It's up to date with, and as far as it knows, this is really important. As far as it knows, it's up to date with origin master. And then if I were to do some work, then I could do some more work. But let's do what you said. I actually think, Andy, I think just to keep things simple, I'm going to basically disconnect. I'm going to get this so that our origin is GitHub. And then we can go into some other tools and try to do things that I think are more realistic. What did I do there? I shouldn't call it Git remove.
You said remove,
it's
and it
Git
wanted
remote.
Remote-R. Oh, you're adding. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to
now
add,
you spelled
but I don't know
removed.
There we go. So, and then why do I always do verbose? Because if I don't do verbose here, then I just get this, and that doesn't show me where it's pointing.
Seems kind of useless.
So I'm not a big fan of.
You feel like the default should have been the verbose one, but okay.
For me, so I like I.
No,
it's just,
I don't know why you.
It's a habit. It's a habit of mine. So let's take a look. Let's open Visual Studio. I think that's a pretty common place. So people clone a repo, they clone a repository, and then the first thing they're going to do is they're going to open up Visual Studio, right? And I happen to be in Visual Studio 2019, and it turns out Visual Studio 2019 has Git support built right in, so I don't have to sit at the command line. But the first question might be where?
Where what?
Where is that support?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no Git menu.
Yeah, there's no Git menu.
There's no source menu.
Source.
Yeah.
It used to be file, source control, right?
So this just happens to be, nothing special going on in this project at this point. So, I mean, I'll ask you, where is the source control?
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, so Team Explorer.
The answer is Team Explorer. Yeah. Okay. So if you don't have Team Explorer sitting here on the right, that's okay. Maybe you've accidentally closed it at one point and you're like, oh my gosh, it's gone. And you say to yourself, oh, do I really have to figure out which window it's in? You don't. Because in Visual Studio, I can go to the search bar or hit Control Q and type Team Explorer. And this is what I really want. I want to click this to bring it back.
Yep.
Because some people might have moved this or whatever.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
Just to make this simple, I'm going to enlarge it. I'm gonna pin it, and that's what this pin in the corner is going to keep it from disappearing every time I go do something else. And I'm going to make it a little bit wider so we can look at it. Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, it already knows. It's already telling me, hey, you're connected to GitHub here, right? GitHub. Well, not connected. I really don't like it. Your origin, your remote is from github.com, the dev talk show. And then I can do a bunch of stuff. I mean, I can look at the current pull requests, which there aren't any. But this is actually not necessarily Team Explorer as much as it is the GitHub extension for Visual Studio, which is in the box. So as part of the Visual Studio installation, it was in here, GitHub extension for Visual Studio. And I recommend you just go ahead and check it. You might as well have this support. What else can we look at? We could, you could look at the wiki for GitHub directly from here, but this is some extra GitHub support. I want to make that clear. You can look at history, but the way you do it is by clicking on branches. And so you mentioned history a little bit ago, and so it took me a little while to get here. There might be a quicker way. I just don't know what it is. So view history gets me to this view of the world and what happened, starting with the most recent and going back to the beginning, where this was your first commit, Andy. Probably you just added in the basics, right?
Yep.
There was a point here where a branch and merge happened. Kind of cool. But for the most part, you mostly worked on it. In fact, you might have branched here because you were trying something out. I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
Well, no, I like to work in branches, and we can get into that's a topic we should talk about is why you would do that. So someone knocking at the door.
You can change branches. So I'm on the master branch, and it tells me that. It also tells me here in the corner. I could make a new branch from here, and I could do some other things. Now, there's not a whole lot exciting going on in this project right now.
Thanks.
Well, what I mean is that there's a straight line of commits. We haven't written any code. We don't have anything to commit. Someone else hasn't done some work.
Right.
So let's take a quick look at VS Code. In VS Code, if I go to the same folder and I open that in Visual Studio Code, let's take a look at the support in there. Now, I want to deactivate a couple extensions just to make sure. Because I think I have GitLens. Let's turn that off. GitLens is awesome, by the way, and we'll probably just turn it back on in a second. but let's disable it. And then did I have anything else that was Git formatting? I don't think so. So we'll reload, mainly because I want to look at this is the out of the box experience.
Mm-hmm.
So even out of the box, Git has a Git, one of these main menu buttons, files, search. Git is main. It's first class.
Yeah, Meg's asking, is that on VS Code too?
Yeah.
Now maybe I'm behind. I wonder what is that on.
Well,
VS
just
Code
basically
too?
If there's built-in Git support, right?
Yeah.
So this is the Git support in VS Code.
Yeah.
That's in the box, right? So Team Explorer is a little bit more fully featured. But this is what's in the box, and then I'll go turn GitLens back on.
The concept is the same. It's tooling. They just brand it as Team
tooling
Explorer.
That's built in, yeah.
In Visual Studio, in VS Code, it's.
I think it's fair to say that there's a lot more by default in here. Like when I went to home, we saw all kinds of things. Like,
I never even noticed some of those things in there. Actually,
in fact, I'm not even sure what Pulse is. Although I could guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's not get. I
don't want to get lost.
Right, yeah.
But so VS Code with nothing else, you get some Git support here in the Git tab. For example, it's telling me, hey, you've got a couple changes that aren't in your Git ignore. Maybe they should be. Maybe VS Code should be in the Git ignore. That's certainly, it certainly is plausible. And it's like you could stage these and add them. I could do it all from here. I think the reason why I wanted to disable that extension is a very popular extension. And there's many, there's other Git ones, but GitLens is a very popular extension. And so I'm going to enable it.
You're going to enable it already, so we're not going to look at the default. Okay.
Well, we did. We looked at the default. Here it is.
Well, we didn't see I
could stage by pushing the plus.
Well, what does that mean?
So in Git, when you're free to work, but you can't actually commit anything unless you deliberately stage it. You say, okay, I want to add this. In Git, it's actually called the index, but it's not really important. It's the staging area is a fair name for it. So you stage a file, or which is really happening is you're staging your changes, and then you can commit those changes.
Okay.
We didn't do any of that, so that probably is too abstract right now. But I don't know that we'll get a chance to really come back to this. So if you are familiar with Git, did I get this in here? Okay, it is enabled. Then here's GitLens. And so if you are familiar, you might look at this and say, oh, I'm interested in this. I think I'm going to take a look at this a bit later. Because you can see there's more features here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
There's more going on. The history of the file that I just worked on. In fact, it even says, well, I can look at the uncommitted changes, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I had any serious ones. I'm not sure that I did. Okay. So, what do you want to look at next? Something that might really happen, right? Something we don't have any branches in this project. We don't have, somebody didn't do some work and commit it while we were busy working.
Well, if somebody's new to Git, we've said the word branches a lot. And they might be wondering, what's that all about? And maybe they're coming from a different source control and they're familiar with branches. But you don't have to have branches, right? We could show a demo of just committing.
Yeah, you don't have to have branches because you're always going to have at least one branch, and by default, it's the master branch.
That's a good point.
There's nothing you can do about that. Could you use Git on your local machine as a content tracker and never create new branches? Yep, you can do that. But I think in a team setting, you're going to branch mainly because it's a kind of a level of isolation. You can go work on this branch just like the branch of a tree, and I can continue staying on the tree trunk or maybe on a different branch. And that way, if you make a mistake on your branch and fall to the ground, then I don't worry about it.
Right, or if we have multiple features being changed at once and some of them aren't ready, the whole branching strategy is
it's a method of isolation that I think came about because waiting until a feature or some code is ready to ship is not good enough. You might want a way to test and diverge from what the published code is doing, but still take advantage of things like history or being able to share it with your teammates. And if we don't have something like branches, you're back to saying, well, I guess I'll email you my changes so that you can implement them yourself.
Right.
We have to have something. So I think in general, it's fair to say that if you were going to do some work, it's good practice to do it on a branch.
I think it's good practice. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And I think, I don't know that we have enough time in the show to go from the very beginning. So I think there's going to have to be some assumption that people know a little bit. Maybe you're using Git at work already. But this is a pretty common thing that I think happens to people. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of do the wrong thing, and we can talk about how you would fix it.
Oh, good.
So this probably happens to people all the time.
I think I know where you're going with this because it's on my list of things to show tonight.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I did it today. I'm going to work. I clone the repo because I got to make a change.
Yeah, sure.
So I open the code.
Bug fix.
I'm going to open the code and let me make the change. The change is Rich and I and everybody, we got together and we said, I'm still in this. No, I think I can work here. I'm just not sure why stuff was popping up. So here's the README. And let me just double check that I'm definitely in the README file, right? I'm in readme.md. And why is the README important? Because it gets rendered here. It's nice because it gets rendered for you by default by Git. But we decided what we were going to put in here. This was left to do. So my job is to come in and fix it. So I come in and I'm going to go to work. And this is the public website for the Dev Talk Show, written with .NET Core, and in the future we'll be using Blazor. I don't even really care so much that it's perfect, right? That's a change. Okay, happens all the time. And so I save it, and not only do I save it, I kind of know Git, so I say to myself, okay, yep, I've got this new change. It even will show me the difference. It'll show me, okay, here's was the old, and this is the new. So I'm gonna, and it even knows, it's like, yeah, okay, you've changed it, so I'm gonna stage that. I haven't committed it yet. So just to run out to the command line, I could do that git status again from here. And notice how the tools, they all work together. Working in one is not affecting the other. It's not breaking the other. If I went to Visual Studio, then in Team Explorer, under changes, here's my stage change. And I could even double click on it and it's gonna show me left and right. So it's kind of nice that you don't have to worry about working in one and having that blow up. Oh my gosh, the other tool's gonna get completely out of whack. That's not the case. So in Visual Studio Code, I haven't left Visual Studio Code yet, and I'm gonna go ahead and put in a commit message that said updated intro to our real purpose. Our real grand purpose. And in Visual Studio Code, you check the commit button and boom, it's committed. And I take a step back and I go, man, that's awesome. I made that change. Andy's gonna be super happy that I made it. And here I am. Oh, I can even see it in the history. Boy, that's awesome. Now, what did I do wrong?
Well, you did it in the master.
I did it in the master. What? I did what?
Yeah, you forgot to change. Right, we all do that, right? We just start working.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Look at this commit history. Here's my commit. And here I just did it, but I did it in master. So I can't push this up to GitHub because we have a rule that we're supposed to discuss it on a pull request or a branch or something.
Now, as you said that, it made me think, right? If you're new and you're watching this, right? He committed it. But you only committed it locally.
It's only here.
It hasn't been sent up
right.
yet. But now you want to send it up.
Right.
But the server's going to go, no, you're not allowed to send it up. Well, depending on the rules. No, I'm saying. Like,
so GitHub, that is a rule you can set in GitHub.
Yeah.
You can do that. That only pull requests, right? You could not. But I think I would technically be able to do it. But let's just say.
Yeah, right. You said, no, I'm expecting a pull request.
Yeah.
I wanted a pull request or a code review, if you want to call it that. Right. I'm expecting to see that change.
Yeah. And the reason why we want it on a feature branch is because maybe in order to check out my work, you want to bring it down.
Yeah.
Because in this case, it's just text. This could be code. And you want to bring the branch down and take a look at it and compile it. and see what you think.
So now we're kind of screwed though, because you already committed it locally.
Well, it seems like I'm kind of screwed, but it turns out there's a couple ways around this. I'm going to go through the one that I think that I like. It's very key that what Andy's saying though is, see, I haven't pushed it. I've only committed it. Right. So that commit, and this is one of the hardest things to get used to, is the Git repository here on this machine has the history. But so far up in GitHub land,
if we go up to GitHub, you won't see that.
It's not here. Right. I can even hit refresh. And that change is not, I'm in master, and see, you're still on updated YouTube embed, which is the one before. Okay. Yeah. So what's something I can do? Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another branch right here in place, because then this is the way I like to describe branches. Branches are just pointers to commits. It's like Git has a sticky note pad and a marker, and it writes the name of the branch on the sticky note pad, and it pulls it off and attaches it to a commit. But it's very easy to pick up and move Post-it notes, sticky notes. Very easy to do. So Git, similarly, you're going to see that it's very easy to pick those things up. The trick is learning when your changes are going to wreak havoc for everyone else and when you've isolated everything to yourself so it's no big deal. Well, I haven't pushed this change to master, so I haven't really hurt anyone yet. So what I can do, and there's a couple ways I can do it. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this in Visual Studio, because I don't actually use this. I can say new branch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it README intro update. Actually, Meg's right. README intro update, so I don't have to push shift. So what is this dialog saying? It is saying create a new branch called README intro update based on master. That means write out a new sticky note and put it right beside master sticky note. Now it says checkout branch. Checkout is this term in Git that means so many different things. What it means is make that my current branch, so that way work that I now do will affect that branch. And I use the word affect on purpose.
Yeah, checkout really means switch to.
Switch to, but so, yeah.
I mean, it's probably more than that, but
it can't. That's one of the problems. It can do more than that. Yeah. It can also reset. It can get rid of work that you're working on. It can do so many different things.
Right.
And so if I say create branch, I could do this at the command line by just simply of saying git branch.
Right.
I could have said git branch readme intro update. If I would have said git checkout -b readme intro update, that's the same as checking that box. So I say create branch, and let's take a look at what's happened here. I've noticed that I have to refresh. That bugs me. That bothers me.
I wonder if there's a setting for that.
There might be. There might be.
Keep it in sync.
There might be. So now I have these two signposts, both pointing to the same commit. These are Post-it notes. I took one off, I slapped it up on top. So now the trick is what I really want to do here is I want to get this one back in sync with what's going on up in GitHub. So I can go double check and make sure like, yep, it is back in sync. For me to pick this up and move it right here on my own local machine isn't bothering anyone. You don't know what I've done yet. Neither does Rich. Nobody knows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to master, which it looks like I can do by going to the lower right and picking the branch. So now I've checked out master.
See that
you can't really see that lower right. It's kind of tough. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I can go to the command line, and I could say, so if I do git status from the command line, it says I'm on branch master. I could check back out. What was that one called? Remote or readme intro update. Switch to branch, but it doesn't feel like doesn't feel like it's doing anything. So the question is what is it doing? The branch that you're on, it determines a lot of conventions for Git. The next commit that I make is going to pick up that Post-it note. It's going to make a new commit, point it to this current commit, pick up the Post-it note, and move along with me. But it will only do it on the current branch. Master will get left behind. That's not what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to put master back. So unfortunately, I don't know why I don't have GitKraken going, because I wanted to show, because GitKraken's graph view is perfect for this, but that's okay. So I don't know for sure if I check out, we have master checked out. Let's see if Team Explorer, I don't know that Team Explorer has a reset. I just don't know that it does. Can I right click here and say reset? I can. Okay.
I think Meg's a fan of Git.
No, this is good. This is good.
Oh, look at this.
This did not used to be.
Yeah, I don't know. How did you find that? Sorry, do that again.
So what I did is the commit. I'm currently on master.
Yeah.
This is my checked out branch.
Okay.
I right clicked on this commit. I'm pretty sure this is new. And when I say new, I mean last few years, because I kind of abandoned Visual Studio Source Control for a little while. But here is reset. This is a Git command. Reset hard is the one I'm looking for. In this case, what I'm saying is pick up the Post-it note, move it to this commit, and delete any changes. And delete sounds like really harsh. I like to prefer to it as set my working copy to exactly what that commit had. If I had made any changes or whatever, set them back, which is kind of what I want. That is what I want in this scenario. I think the delete changes would scare the heck out of people. So when I click on that, are you sure you want to reset this branch? Now let's see. And then it looks like I do have to hit this refresh. So now I've got masters pointing back to updated YouTube embed again.
But where are the changes? Because we don't want to lose those changes.
They're not lost.
Right.
Here's where I do have to say I prefer GitKraken. So Rich, I'm going to have to log into GitKraken. I don't know why I'm not logged in.
I have an idea, though. If you go back to the other screen, if you were to switch branches...
it'll be back if I do that.
That's what I want to... let's, for consistency, let's just show that one.
Well, at least it should be.
You are switching...
Looks like I've got to close this, maybe.
Which branch are you in now?
I'm in README intro updates. What if I view its history? There it is. It's
okay,
here.
That's what we want to see. So the fact is it's still here.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's kind of important, by the way, now that we have the two different branches having information that's different about them, to me, the best way to
So let me come off my screen real quick, Rich.
Okay.
But go ahead. Explain what you wanted to do.
Well, I think it's a good example to show. This is the demo that hammers it all home for me over the years when I learned this stuff. Is when you look in, it's like almost like mind-boggling that it works this way. But if you look in Explorer, Windows Explorer, you're looking at the file system, right? And you run the command and you're on the git checkout master. So you're on the master branch. If you look in the file system, if you open up that file, you'll see one version of the file. And if you switch to the branch and you open up that same file, because there's no new folders, it doesn't create folders for it. The file is different.
Yep, it changes.
But it doesn't make sense, sort of, because you're thinking, but the file points to a spot on disk, and that's where Git does its magic. But I think that demo, if we can show that,
sure,
I think really kind of hammers it home for people.
Okay, so let's go back. And this is my personal favorite Git tool, and the reason why is because I think compared to most, and I don't want to say anything bad about anybody else's favorite tool, this is the most accurate representation, it's a completely accurate representation of what Git's really doing. You saw that Visual Studio made it look like this disappeared. Well, GitKraken is showing me everything. It's showing me that master's sticky note is pointing here, and README intro updates is pointing here. And even better, I can see that README intro update is a direct descendant of master, which tells me that if I were to go back to master and pull README intro update, or it would be a simple fast forward. There can't possibly be a merge conflict because the descendant is direct. So none of that's as important as kind of what you were saying is like how, let's switch back and forth, right? So file on disk. File on disk is readme.md.
Now, it's important to note first, if I move aside again, hang on, if I move aside again, what does it say here? We
happen to be in README intro update.
So we're in the branch.
Yeah.
Currently we're in that README update intro
and you can see that here, the check mark.
That's how you can see the check mark. Okay,
we are currently here.
Currently on that branch, right?
And this is what the file looks like.
Yeah, and if we, all right, that's what the file looks like, right? Okay, good.
So if I say git checkout master, I could also go change that drop down in Visual Studio, or I could check it out in Visual Studio Code, or I could check it out in GitKraken. Crazy, right?
Yeah, but what you're not...
They all do the same thing.
Right.
And the problem is I think people kind of get hung up on, well, how do I do it in this tool? How do I do it in that tool? this is what we're doing. We're checking out the master branch.
Mm-hmm.
It says switch to branch master. And if I head back to Visual Studio Code, this is back to your to-do language.
Yeah.
So by default, what Git will do is say, okay, nobody's changed that file. So when you're changing branches, you must want that version of the file from that point in time.
Right.
It can get confusing though, because what if I changed it again here and saved it and then tried to switch back? So Git does this automatically. It says, hold on a second. I noticed something. I was going to change a file that you've changed and saved. So it stops the process cold. And this is one of the things that can make people pull their hair out. They stop and they say, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to delete the repo. I'm going to save my README-MD file off on my desktop, delete the repository, bring it back down. But the reason this happened is because earlier, I know you wanted to see the switch of branches. And Git will blissfully do that all day long because it's smart enough to say, well, you haven't changed anything, so you don't care. Right. But I did change that file. And not only did I change the file, I changed a file that was going to be altered by the checkout. Because if I went and changed a different file, checkout would have worked just fine.
Right. It knows it's a conflict.
Yeah, it's essentially detecting a conflict ahead of time. It's like, hold on a second. What is it that you really meant to do here?
Yep.
And there's two options. One of them is the popular stash. So by the way, it says at the bottom it aborted. So we can, I know you can't see it. Visual Studio everybody stayed on master. We did not actually leave master. I didn't get to change, that branch didn't change.
Right.
So.
And it's important to say here again, I think, you can't have Visual Studio be on one branch and VS Code be on a different branch.
Yep, you're right.
The point is, they're all using the same Git repo. And the repo is either on branch A or on branch B or on branch C.
Yeah.
These other things are just consuming that repo or something like that. And the repo can only have one status at a time.
Yeah, the magic is all in the .git folder.
Right.
So this is what's determining, that file right there is determining what branch you're on.
Right.
It plainly says that it's on master. And if I were to, I can't change it right now because we're in the middle of this kind of spot where, in fact, Git Kraken's even detected by moving this to the side. Git Kraken has detected that the work in progress is diverged. That's what I love about this, is visually I'm seeing that the work in progress does not build on this, it's diverged. And so I instantly know, wait a second, I can't switch back to README intro update, which is a double click and Git Kraken. It's going to, can't do it. But you get that visual. And this is the main reason I use that tool. I really do enjoy this. But
that's a free tool?
It's free for non-commercial use. So if you want to use it at work, then you got to have work pony up for it, right? But it's free for you to use on your own.
And when you were logging into it, was that really logging into because
they have Git Kraken accounts. You can also use your GitHub account, but you don't. But it's purely because it is something you log into. I think partially for the licensing, right? Okay. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we fix this? I guess the first question is that there is no one answer to how do you fix it. It's what is the problem? This is where I can't predict for you. This is the human intervention of conflicts, right? Which was it right for me to change this? Or no, I actually didn't know that somebody else not only changed but was tasked with they were told to do that.
Sure.
So I could discard this. I could just say, well, I guess I want to go back to where I was, and now I'm free to move to that branch. If there's going to be a contention, I could commit it to a different branch, and then maybe we have a meeting and we talk about it. If I don't even really have time for that, and I just need to get back to work on master because Andy's my boss, he came over and he said, whatever it is you're doing, we need you need to add a new feature. So that means I need to get back to master. I could stash. Stash is a popular way. Stash is kind of like, if you were in TFS, it's like shelf sets.
Oh, yeah, that's
like
a good
that.
analogy, right? Does it? Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So currently, the work in progress happens to include these two guys. I'm gonna just go ahead and let it happen. I dispute why VS Code is not in the git ignore, but I don't care. I don't want to worry about that. So I can simply just say git stash, and git says, okay, I saved your working directory, and the state, this is important, the state of the index, which means what you might have already staged a commit, I saved it off somewhere. And then I put you back on master. So here's what that looks like, is I'm back on master, technically, because it's pointing to it. I wish I could just get rid of these guys. Let me do it to get them out of the way. I don't want them to confuse anyone. So I'm on master. That stash has been kept for me. And then, but now I'm free. I could switch back to readme intro update if I wanted to now. That would work. I don't know that I really need to do that, but I could. But I'm back to it again because I don't have a file that I've changed that has also been changed by the branch I tried to check out to. And that part's just a little important because I think it's very easy to get confused of what if I did this whole process and I changed a different file? And in fact, I'm pretty sure that's correct. Watch me find out. This is where I'm going to learn something. So I'm back on master and I go to program CS and I just add a comment here. This should be, and I save it. I've got work in progress. This program CS has changed. But what if I want to check out that readme intro update? It'll let me do it because it doesn't see anything in readme intro update that's a problem. It did change the readme file, but it's like, hey, if you want to build on top of that, be my guest. Yeah, sure.
So where is that change now? So you switched to the readme intro update.
The change is still saved, but not staged or committed. See, it's still here.
Right.
But the readme has changed.
Yeah. So
I could commit it now.
Right.
This little nuance is so easy to get confused about. Since in the last example, I changed a file that was changed by the other branch. So when I checked it out, that's a conflict. Git here says, well, you changed the file. And yeah, that branch you're heading to, it's got a different file changed. Okay. And that, how do you know? How do you know that that's happened? Unless you know how to read this. I'm not sure that it's all that. Let's see what happens if you do it in a tool, just out of curiosity. Change back to master. And again, no big deal. Program CS still has my change and readme is back to master's version. Git doesn't see that as a problem. You might. And that's why this little nuance trips people up all the time. Try to switch back. See, I got no indication there, right? Nothing told me. Should something have told me, or should I be able to tell right here? Should I be able to just see that, well, it's, and so actually like Meg's comment is it's because it's only a comment. It's actually not that at all. It's because there's no conflict between me working on program CS and the branch that I switched to.
Yeah, because Git doesn't know comments from code. It's all text at the level of source control.
Although it does have some rules for programming languages.
It does?
Yeah, and I don't completely. I want to tell you right now that I don't completely understand them because it's very complicated stuff. But I just saw the other day that Git added support for a few new programming languages for its merging. Now,
really,
it's because Git tries to help you out in a lot of cases.
Okay.
But in the end, it's on you. What you commit is on you. Like that is a central tenet of Git. So like that's that's tough, and that's even hard to explain. And it's extremely hard to think about how do you present stuff like this so that when the person goes back to work, they actually remember what you said. Because I don't think you were surprised at all by the switch from master causing a problem with README, but you seemed to get surprised when I changed a different file and I'm now able to switch back and forth. It's like you'd never thought of that scenario.
No, well, I guess, yeah, it's kind of confusing for me to explain what I was, and Meg's saying, can you run through that one more time?
Yeah.
Right. So I think and this is what's great about this show, like this interactive nature. Now, hopefully people are going to watch it on YouTube in the future. And they won't see that. They don't get to participate like that. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is one of the great things about saying, hey, come with us on Wednesday nights and you can ask us to do stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are watching on YouTube, what should you do?
Should like and comment and subscribe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're supposed to say that throughout the show.
That's true.
Made me think of it. And if you're watching now live, please subscribe. But anyway, the thing I was trying to get at, and I'm not sure how to explain it exactly, is that if you made that change that didn't have any effect, it didn't cause a conflict, okay? And you made the change in the named branch. I forget what we call it, but it doesn't matter what it's called, right? Not in the master branch.
Mm-hmm.
You make the change in the name branch. There's no conflict, so you switch back to master, and it lets it happen. Okay. Now, if you commit master at that point, the change is going or not going.
So let's walk through it.
Do you understand why I'm saying that?
I think I understand what you're saying.
Because I think when you switch it, I think the change moves along with it. Because
it went with me because it hasn't been, like I haven't committed it to the repository.
Right. You haven't committed it.
I didn't even stage it. Right. I could stage it though.
So is it in the file? Like the file knows that that's there. So now, and it's sort of that difference between I don't know. It's this stuff's like confusing. I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, let's take a look. So let's see what happens if you try to commit.
Okay, so let's do this.
And then we can run through it again for Meg.
Yeah.
And for me too, and for all other users.
So what are we on? We're on README. We're on the feature branch. Okay. And then if I switch.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I don't know if do we need Git Kraken or is that's adding a layer of confusion? We could see it all through VS Code.
Is it? Because I actually think this is the best view of this.
Yeah, but you can also just.
I mean, here I don't get anything.
Well, you do. If you go to your source control, that thing, you can see that what's changed, right?
Yeah. The problem is that I feel like you just don't get a lot of information.
Okay.
Like what branch am I on right now? Well, I guess I can figure it out eventually.
Isn't it like under one of these screens? Oh, it's on the left. It tells you that you're in the yeah. So there's your branch. Okay.
So what is it that we want? We want to be on master? We want to be on...
If you switch to master...
Or do we want to start over?
Let's start over.
Okay. So the easiest way to start over is to delete this branch. I'm just going to do it there because it's quick. Okay. So all we have is master. That's it.
You just deleted the branch.
Yeah. In fact, and I'm going to delete this stash too because I don't care about it. I really don't care. I want this to be... And... Let's discard the change. Okay.
So we've got like a
this is like I've cloned.
Right. Yeah.
I've cloned from Git.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm on master. Now, do we want to say we're doing it right this time and we make the feature branch first? Or does that not matter?
Sure, let's do it right.
Okay, so we do it right, quote unquote. I'm actually not sure how you branch in Visual Studio Code. I think you can do it from the command
branch. You type branch and then it.
Yeah, here we go. Create branch.
Yeah, and then you give it a name. I mean, as simple as that.
I'm just going to call it README, so I don't have to type
easier.
a lot.
Yeah, right.
So I believe theoretically, I think I'm on the README branch now. Yep, I'm on the README branch.
You are. Yep.
2 sticky notes pointing to the same commit. Yep. Okay, great. So we're going to change the intro.
And Meg says git co-b. I don't know what co is.
Checkout. Yeah, git checkout.
I don't use that.
B,
oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do co. I've always done checkout. Thanks, Meg. Or is she just using shorthand, or are you allowed to say co?
Well, some people create aliases, but she might be right.
Okay.
She might be right. Some people create aliases. They have like a whole standard set of aliases.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the good intro. We are changing to this. I save that.
You save that.
Okay. Now, what have I done at this point? All I've done is save the file.
That's right.
I haven't staged it.
Yes, correct.
Visual Studio Code's telling me that. If I did a git status here, Git would tell me the same, command line tells me the same thing.
It says, wait. It says
this is what you
modified README.
Yeah,
yep. It knows you modified README. My question is, if we switch back to master right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now you say get status.
I got a little bit of an indicator.
You already
here.
did, yeah.
It's like which the other tools didn't do. But
Yeah,
that's okay.
So just do, just for sake of completeness. Right. So that's really interesting because what I find, this is a slightly different scenario than you showed before. What I find is I'm in master. I start doing a whole bunch of work, and then I go, I'm not even at the check-in stage yet. I'm like, oh, I forgot to make a branch.
You could just make the branch.
And all you do is make a branch, and those changes are just in there.
Yeah, and
They're
so
just there.
I don't want to make it sound like they've moved.
Well, they haven't moved.
This is your working copy.
Yeah, this is your working
And what's
copy.
super confusing is besides a working area, you also have a staging area, and that's not visible. When you hit dir or you look in File Explorer, you don't see that.
Right, and this is what I was getting at before. There's no folder for the branch or the staging area.
Yeah,
It's
you're right.
just this one space on disk. But magically, when you open the file, Git changes it if it needs to.
If it needs to, right?
Yeah,
Right.
which is just super cool.
So, like, if I change it, and this is the way to stage.
Now you're in the.
I'm on Branch Master.
Yeah. No.
Yep,
You're in Branch.
I'm on Branch
README.
Master.
No, it says README down at the bottom of.
I think when I click here, it'll change it.
Oh,
I've noticed that some
Okay,
tools you have to go back to them for them to, because I think some tools try not to sit there spinning
Consume
cycles.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And some tools
right.
don't, because clearly
Right.
Visual Studio had changed.
Yeah.
But if I add it, it's like there's a very what did I do wrong there? I know what I did wrong there is I didn't use caps. So now I'm pretty sure that git status is going to say, so it's in green now, and instead of it saying changes not staged for commit, it says changes to be committed.
Okay.
So this has been staged.
Right. Now, will it let you switch back to master right now?
I'm on master at the moment. You want me to switch to the other branch?
Sorry. Yeah. Right.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
okay. The staging area in the working copy, that's fine. I haven't committed anything. Maybe I wanted to do this. But
you staged it, but you still haven't
I
committed.
still haven't committed
Right.
it. It's,
Okay.
And you have all the rope you need to confuse yourself, right?
You really do, right? And I don't typically wait a lot of time between a stage and a commit. So
most people don't.
Right. So this is a
And
funny
so this
space.
kind of exploration makes you stop for a second and go, huh, like there's more going on here than I realized.
Right.
If I wanted to.
Can you show README and master in
VS Code? Yep.
VS Code, yeah.
Okay,
right.
so right now, remember, I haven't committed anything. So what that means is this file that has been saved and staged, it doesn't matter what branch I move back and forth to.
Right.
Because there's no commit in the world that has taken this code yet.
Yeah. Even staging doesn't have an effect on it.
Right. I could do this. I could say, let's create another branch right here in place called B2. And so now there's 3 of them. And I don't think I have to show you each time. If I just switch to B2, no problem. Switch to README, no problem.
Yeah, it's got it too. Right?
Sorry, git checkout README. It's what it's doing. So the working copy. I should have had my.
What's the matter?
I should have had my pen.
Oh,
That's all right.
well, I'd give you mine, but mine doesn't work on yours, right? Oh, you would have
It
to
might not.
synchronize it anyway. No, it won't. It won't.
Let's see if it lets me draw with my finger. Okay.
What's wrong with a finger?
So. It didn't let me draw my.
well, you got to hit draw mode. Yeah, there
Okay,
you go.
so this is your file system.
right.
When you do an add or a stage, files start getting remembered in a staging area. None of that is the commits. These are the commits. And then maybe there was a little divergence here and then a merge commit.
So is the
These are
staging area
separate.
inside that Git folder?
It is
Just
inside
like
the
a-
Git
yeah.
folder, yeah. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a fair enough statement, and it's correct. It's technically correct. So is this, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in there. So, let's see, what branch am I in right now? I'm in README, and then let me quickly check out B2, and then we'll do a quick status. You can see that I have switched to B2.
Sure.
If you're watching Visual Studio Code down here, Visual Studio Code doesn't seem to update until after. Where I think Visual Studio, see how it's in B2? I think Visual Studio is changing immediately. Yep, see that?
I don't know where you're looking.
It's unfortunately it's behind Andy. So let me do this. Let me
That's the one I was looking at. Yeah, these screens are
Let me do that.
No, I think the point's made. It's okay, yeah.
I think I confused Meg a little while ago because even though I did a checkout from command line, in the lower left-hand corner, Visual Studio Code doesn't pick it up.
Right.
Until
it confused me for a minute too, but now I get it. Yeah.
But now this is better because at least we can thank Visual Studio for being instant here. So git checkout readme. Git
that's pretty
checkout
cool. Yeah.
v2. I might remember that for tomorrow or Friday. Saturday.
Or Saturday.
Whatever day I do
Sunday
this talk.
or Monday.
Okay, let me show you why. This is why I like Git Kraken though, because see how all these post-it notes are pointing to the same commit? That's accurate. That's really what's happened. That has meaning, and these aren't 3 different branches. To draw the tree this way is wrong. Like if I move, let me get out of this mode.
Oh boy.
If you drew the branch tree this way and you said, here was the last commit, here's B2, here's master, here's readme, that's not correct.
Right.
That's just not how Git works because, don't you love the not having a pen?
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Because Git is commit first, branches are just pointers.
Right. So now if you let's check
Let's do something. Yeah.
Let's check that in on one of these branches.
Right. Let's do readme.
Okay.
So that means I need to switch to it.
Yep.
Okay. And we know that we've already staged, which means we're ready to commit.
Right.
So from command line, what if I just do git commit?
You got to add comments, right?
My Git editor happens to be Visual Studio Code, so it popped up for me.
Okay.
I didn't have to do that. And I could say, changed the intro per Andy's wishes.
But you could have also just had the commit message on that.
I could have with a dash
line,
M, right. I could have done that. If I save this, close it, done. It even hears the commit message. Right, it's all here.
Yep. Now Meg says she's not getting the same results, and so now she says never mind. So she figured it out. Whatever she was trying to do, she's playing along at home.
Yeah,
which is cool.
So there is now a commit on B2. Let's take a look at the status. It's like nothing to do. I'm sorry, I was wrong when I said it was on B2. We did it on README, and then let's go check out master. Whoops, git checkout master, and this is the money. This was the money shot for you earlier. Was well, everything's clean, but let's go back and find that file, and it's been changed back.
Yeah,
changed back. But if you switch to okay.
But if I changed it here and then tried to go back to B2, Git would say, hold on a second, B2's got a change that you don't seem to be ready to take.
Right.
That is confusing, and that's unlike other source control systems, I think. I think in other source control systems, if you tried to switch to a branch, it would be like, okay, I'm blowing everything away and making it exactly like that branch. And there are little subtleties in Git that don't work that way.
Meg's leaving a comment again. Now she says, I don't understand. That's how it's supposed to work.
It is, if you came from Subversion and you tried to switch to a branch, like if I came from Subversion and I did this and I said, well, actually, it's been a while since I've used Subversion.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So totally different change. And then I save it. Then Subversion's going to say like, okay, well, you can go over there, but I'm going to blow this away. Git stops me by recognizing that I'm no longer compatible with that other branch.
Right.
That wasn't actually what we were dealing with a little bit earlier, though. We were dealing with the idea of I have
Meg's catching up.
I have
I
this.
think you're talking about something totally different.
I have a README. I have a README change on a branch, right? But I'm on master. And what does it mean to be on master? It means that if I were to commit, that it's going to be a direct descendant of this, and we're going to move the sticky note up. What I did that was a little weird is I came in here and I went to a different file and changed something. Right. So it's hard to get really far with this stuff because there's probably so much more we could talk about, like reset. We didn't talk about rebasing or anything.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Or merging versus rebasing or anything.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do.
And it's why it's very difficult to do in an hour talk. And
well, you're gonna have that problem on Saturday.
I've had it several times.
But you won't have me talking throughout the whole thing and interrupting and putting in.
No, but
directions.
people will ask questions, and they should, because it's not straightforward.
Right.
And it turns out that the hard things that make you get angry and say, forget it, I'm throwing the whole thing away, and it's, well, I want you to help me solve those. Okay, that's tough.
Yeah.
The concepts are hard to understand. So like, I'm a big fan of this. I know we didn't talk about, like, the reason why I'm not a fan of GitHub Desktop is because in this view, the view is very branch centric. I can look at the history, but then there's no way for me to look at it all combined, which is the I'm sorry, gosh darn it, too many windows open. I wanted to come back here. There's no way for me to look at the combined history.
Yeah, I have this, this doesn't seem to bother a lot of people, but I have this block in my brain. And I like Windows to be maximized and stuff like that, because I can't see where the lines between the different windows are. And so like I get confused. So, you know what I mean? Like I can't tell which UI is which.
So I've never been a big fan of how the history isn't all together. How here it's like, well, it really gets you to think that the branches are different. And I think that's the first step to misunderstanding.
So you're saying this lays it out differently, right?
Well, yeah, it's basically branch first thinking, where I've got to actually switch a branch just so I can see the history. And you might actually think they're different, but then you look at what's really going on and you go, oh no, B2 and master are actually the same exact commit, and README is just one ahead of it.
Yeah.
They're not different branches on a tree yet.
I think Meg just had the aha moment at home, because she's saying, yeah, if you make a change and don't commit before checking out another branch, Git will let you. And that's what we're saying.
Git will yell at you. It can.
No. If you make a change and don't commit before checking out another branch, assuming the other branch is clean.
Well, then she said Git will yell at you.
Oh, I thought she said
because
Git
sometimes
will
it will. It will. If you're changing to the other branch now would put you in conflict with that branch, it's going to stop you.
Right.
So
it's doing the right thing.
It is doing the right
what it
thing.
Needs to do.
But the messages it gives you, or maybe the lack of messages a tool might give you, leaves you just wondering what happened. Like here I am in B2, right, which is not the same as README. And if I go ahead and I just make any change, this could be any change. It doesn't matter that it's a commit. It doesn't matter that it's in Program CS. And I go ahead and stage it, and I go ahead and give it any old message, because I just don't care all that much. Now we're seeing how things have diverged. README went this direction, B2 went a different direction.
Right.
And now this is where, and this isn't bad. This isn't bad. You might say, well, gosh, these changes are compatible. The change to README and the change to B2 are totally compatible.
Well, it's two different projects.
Yeah, so we're working on two different. So why don't I just merge README in here? And this is a decision someone else makes. So you say, yeah, let's. I don't know that's that easy to do. Can I do it from here? Yep, merge README into B2. Git is smart enough to say, like, okay, fine. Here, let me make what's called a merge commit, because notice that Git has no other. Git commits are immutable in Git. They can't be changed. So what Git says is the only way I can reconcile the fact that you have one commit that changed this file and one commit that you changed this file is, what if I make what's called a merge commit, and in that I give it two parents. That's over here on the right-hand side.
Yep.
This commit has two parents, and it represents all the changes that were needed to get from one branch to the other. B2 already had the program CS change, but it didn't have the README change. So look at this, readme.md. The merge commit has readme.md. It's basically finding a way to make a directly descendant commit that has this change. So now this is all, as far as it's concerned, there's no conflicts. It says, yep, you can be directly descended from, you can be the ancestor of this, and that's no problem.
Right.
And you can be the ancestor of this, and that's no problem. And that's called a merge commit. And now, because we've got this we've closed the loop. We've got a commit that made it back to a merge and another commit that made it back to a merge. Now master can just be pulled up. It's technically called a fast forward. But what I could do now is I could say, I can check out master, and I could right click on B2 and say pull, fast forward if possible, or I could just even say fast forward to B2, and boom, it picks up the sticky note and moves it up one. It didn't actually write anything to disk. It just moves the pointer. That part takes work, and I think you got to see it several times to go like, oh, I think I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
That's a merge commit. And then, of course, we didn't even talk about how someone else might have done something totally different there.
Yeah, so this is interesting because, this isn't your basic getting started with Git. Like you're trying to show people how to solve like problems.
Yeah, right.
And
because I think most people can even if you don't give them any training, can use the IDE well enough to save their work, right?
And not even know what's happening, right?
Right. It's what happens is the first time that you can't push to your I don't know what you call it, your golden repository, your work server. The first time you can't do that, and you call over your friend, you call over a person in the next cube, and they can't figure out how to help you.
Right.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
And it leads to finally just saying, I don't know what to do. I really hate Git. I guess I'm just I know I worked on these 5 files. Let me just save them off somewhere.
Now, yeah, and so there's 2 things I want to say sort of at this point, right? Because you're talking about like problems with Git and stuff like that. One thing I'm trying to do is encourage people to switch to Git, like at the workplace. And one of the things I try to say about Git is you have to rip off the Band-Aid, right? People say, well, we're still learning it. We have to get comfortable with it. Sometimes I say, just go for it, right? Now, that's scary because we're talking about all these problems that can come up. And so maybe this is a crutch that I'm going to lean on right here. But I haven't had a problem with Git that a quick Google to Stack Overflow with someone giving me the command hasn't solved. And the problems have generally not been as bad as they like, I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to do. And I type in, how do I do this? I committed something to the wrong branch or something. And there's the command. Boom. Git, do this, do this, do this. Like, so most of the stuff you will be able to get through, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe, maybe it's a good idea for you to go into your system of choice, GitHub or whatever, and say, let's protect master so that nobody can merge directly into it. Because I'll tell you, that's the number one thing that I think people do is, even though you might even have the whole briefing and you sit them down and you say, listen, we do pull requests here and we do feature branches, then they go sit down and they forget and they do a couple things and they do a couple commits and then they push them up and, oh my gosh, I did it on master. Mm-hmm. And everybody goes crazy. You can't do it on master. So your source control system should allow you to disallow that.
Yeah, now one of the things so we use Git on Azure DevOps, Git repos, and one of the things I wish they would have is a way to set that as like a sort of a global policy, because what happens is teams are creating their own repos all the time, right? And if they don't go in and say, oh, I don't want to allow checking on master, there's no way to sort of say, in our organization, I want this policy to be consistent, or at least the default or something like that, and
I believe you if that's true.
It seems like that would be, if anyone's watching or listening.
I think it's true for
seems
GitHub.
Like a feature that should be possible, but maybe it's not.
I think you can do it for GitHub, but I might be wrong. It might only be GitHub Enterprise.
If you can do it in Azure repos, I haven't found out how to do it yet.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because when you set it in Azure repos, you're setting it on the branch in the project.
Yeah, on the branch, right.
In the project.
Right. Which happens to be called master, but it's the,
right.
It's the branch.
Well, that's the one you want to protect.
Yeah. So
that's a good thing. I don't know of a way to do that at the organizational level. It's a good suggestion because you're right. You want a policy that basically says this is how we work.
This is how we. Yeah, exactly. This is how we work. And as the enterprise architect at my organization, like this is part of our jobs, right? Is like setting these for policies, the way we do things, and so it would be cool. Maybe we need to suggest that to somebody. But
user voice,
yeah. So, Where are we at, man?
It's super easy to talk about this for 90 minutes and realize that you haven't said much, which is what has always made this talk really challenging.
Right.
And it's not, and trust me, I'm not mad about it, but it's 25 minutes in, we'll get stuck on something because people in the audience say, no, that's happened to me. Let's go over that again.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I've done a full Friday on this, and I think people were surprised that all we did was talk about Git. Now, granted, when you have the whole 6 hours, it can expand, and well, you have all that time. I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to condense this, because it is a focus on here's what I think you're going to run into versus welcome to Git.
Yes, your talk.
I think they're different talks.
They are different talks, right? And so we might have messed up. I think if I don't mind saying things in public, I think we might have messed up when I was promoting this show as intro to getting started with Git, right? And I said to you, there's the title. That's not what you wanted to talk about. And that's why I kept pushing you to like, well, let's explain for the beginning. You were like, well, we can't go back to the beginning on everything. So, title's important. And your talk on Saturday is called...
It's Curing Your Fear of Git in about an hour.
Right.
Which you should already be afraid if you walk in the door.
Right. You know how to use Git, or you've seen the demos, and you've seen the things, and you're saying, here's the things that I think are going to throw me off.
Right.
Or here's the places where I've gotten stuck. Chris, can you help me? And you're going to help them with that. And that's pretty cool.
It's a list that I've come up with over time of the same issues that, many of them came from me. Just I beat my head against the wall for hours or days. Or I was the one who just threw up my hands and made another repo. And then eventually I got to the place where I said, I don't have to do that. I have tools to work around it.
Yeah.
Or at least I understand what's really happening. So therefore, it's not a surprise to me.
And that's where I think that that Git Kraken really comes into the space. And I'm a believer in this, I'm just whatever. But I think if you're doing intro to Git, right? Git Kraken maybe is beyond, right? But when you're talking about problem solving, I think Git Kraken, there's like a really good story about like Git Kraken solving problems.
The reason why I don't think that is because I think if you omit, if you leave out how the commit graph actually works, then it's magic to people. Git push, well, I guess that worked. What did it do?
Oh, yeah.
What did it really do? And so the visual, while you could do that with slides, the visual is nice because it does it for me.
Right.
But I agree with you that there's a little bit of context switching that happens. Like, you just jumped away. And it's really tough when you want to spend time in command line. And it's not because I think like, oh my gosh, if you don't use Git from command line, you're terrible. It's because I want you to go home to the tools of your choice, which could be Visual Studio, it could be VS Code, it could be Git Kraken, it could even be GitHub Desktop. But the only common denominator here is the command line and the verbs, what you're doing.
It's what's happening.
Yeah.
It is the real thing.
I think I haven't gotten to the place where I'm comfortable pushing aside the fact that you are pushing, pulling, committing, fetching, merging, rebasing. Like those are verbs. They have meaning.
And so we didn't even get into one of your topics that you always talk about when we get into Git. And we talk about like command line versus tooling and stuff like that. Because when Visual Studio introduces sync, and that's just not, there's no such thing.
Right. It's a fetch, a pull, and a push.
And it's cool. And it's got its place. But you always try to focus on like, that's not really what's, there's no Git sync command. Like, you can't type.
And when you hit the sync button and it doesn't work for you, and then you don't know what to do next, that's frustrating.
Yeah. So we could go on and on.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting, it's just late here. And
it is. We spent a couple hours on this.
I was in New York all day. I had a long day. Took a train back to come for this show. Nice. I love this show.
Nice. Well, I want to thank Meg for being a huge participant tonight. And like she pointed out that Git Kraken can definitely help, and it can be used as a crutch. And look, it's my daily driver. And part of the reason I like it is because when I click on things here, these are the same verbs. There's no sync here, but there is a pull and a push and a rebase and a fast forward and a merge. I would go to the command line and I would type git rebase, or I would type git pull, and I would type git push. And there's a lot that we didn't get to cover. Like, what the heck is the difference between a fast forward merge and a merge commit merge?
That's a day-long session right there.
Yeah.
Which I've given twice, and I didn't feel like we got through everything. And I said to myself, how is that possible? How did we talk about this for 6 hours?
Yeah. I mean, things are complicated, you know.
Yeah.
You can't solve every problem either. So focus on common problems, at least, you know, when you're planning the talk and stuff like that. I think focus on common problems. And, you know.
Yep. All right. Cool. So anyways, how does Git work for you? Tell us in the comments. Tell us what tools you like to use. And if you have any tips. And I mean, I think we did a lot of things today. We concentrated on a few key points. Was it news to you that you could change a file and then hop around branches? Or was it news to you that if you changed a different file that you could still hop around? You could hop around to a branch that was later in the commit graph. Was that something you never thought about doing before? Just let us know. And, you know, we could examine Git in a future show, just because, believe me, I have run into the problems enough now that I've got solutions for a lot of things. I mean, things you never think about. What if you accidentally committed a secret password somewhere in your repository, and you don't want to throw the repository away, but you want to make it though is you never committed it? How do you do that?
Right.
Or what if a lawyer comes along in your organization and says, you have a file that you committed 3 years ago that should have never been in the repository? How do you remove it and rewrite all the commits so that it looks like it was never there?
And so, without getting into detail, is that a possible? I thought that was
all
impossible.
That stuff's possible.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm gonna do something that you're not gonna be able to do. I don't know if you're gonna be able to do this on Saturday. You want to cure your fear of Git in an hour. I'm gonna cure your fear of Git in 30 seconds. Because what I'm gonna do is say, when you're at work and you have a problem with Git, call Chris. Here's his phone number right now. I'm gonna give it out. 555 Chris. Okay?
Yeah.
And if you call that number, that's how to cure the fear. We need you to be able to just jump in. And
it's too bad. It shouldn't be that way. That's the hard part. So, and this is the thing, right? This is the most popular source control system in the world, the most used. I'm not going to say it's the most loved. It is probably the most loved and the most hated at the same time, which is something we can say about a programming language called JavaScript, the most used and the most loved and hated at the same time. Sometimes by the same developers.
I don't know people that hate Git.
They come to our user group and say, tell me that Blazor means I'll never have to do JavaScript again. Carl Franklin goes on his show and says,
Git. I don't know anyone that hates Git.
I thought you did say JavaScript.
No, I don't know, I'm tired.
Anyways.
But I think people understand that that's a hard problem, and I think it's better than all the alternatives, and as simple as that. You know,
I think people who get frustrated kind of say, like, this wasn't so hard and blah, name your source control. And the fact of the matter is there's some things that source control can't solve, i.e. conflicts. And a conflict, the definition of a conflict is two people tried to change the same thing. By definition, those two people at a minimum needed to talk. Like, how did that even happen in the first place? Now, of course, there are very good reasons why it happens.
Yep.
But when you really stop and think about it, if there's a conflict, then it means we both change the same file and possibly even in the same place at the same time. That's not compatible by definition. So no source control system can save you from that. Nothing can save you from the, hey, we've decided as a team to make some massive architecture changes. Have you ever had that? The semi-code freeze because you've decided as a team that you're going to kind of completely change the model of maybe some of your data. Some classes are going to be completely redesigned, not even really a refactor. That ends up being on one developer's machine, and everyone's got to stop and wait. Does that ever happen to you?
So big.
It's too big.
Yeah.
Anything would be a conflict.
Many times, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anybody, even if they tried to work, it would be a conflict.
Say, listen, everyone's got to stop.
Yeah.
Because there's no way we can do this without a conflict. Yeah,
and
sure.
Source control can't save you from that.
Right.
So anyways, long show. Hope you got something out of it. And
see you on Saturday.
Yeah,
Come back and see us Saturday morning.
See us
8
Saturday
o'clock.
morning on the Philly.net
8 o'clock,
channel.
we gotta be here, huh?
I will be here quite much earlier than that, but yes, you are welcome to be here anytime after then. So
yeah, what time's the first session? Do we know?
8:30.
first session's 8:30.
Yeah.
We usually do a little bit of a, hey, these are the sessions that are coming up. Get to talk to Bill. Hopefully, Bill will be able to spend a few minutes with us.
The greeter.
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday. Is that like
awesome.
the Walmart kind of thing where she stands up
better
front with
than
like a
that.
vest
Yeah.
on?
It's better
Because it's Code Camp.
Welcome to Philly.net Code Camp.
Yeah.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'll get to meet Meg. I don't know. Do I know Meg? I don't even know if I know Meg. Sometimes from a screen name, you don't even know. Maybe I know Meg. She tackles people that steal things.
That's awesome.
I grabbed an extra. You know what? So she's the one when Bill says only two pieces of sandwiches. Meg's going for the full tackle, right? And we haven't made. Okay, Meg. Well, I'll be seeing you on Saturday.
All right. Well, we'll see you Saturday, and then we'll see all of you next Wednesday here on the Dev Talk Show, 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time.
We'll have to talk about that.
And if it doesn't happen, then we'll see you.
Is that a
following
maybe? Oh,
8:30.
Well, we can do something because I am traveling.
Okay.
But I'm traveling to another office, so I'll have better internet connection this time. I just can't host.
Yeah, we've done the remote show. We think we know how to do it.
Right.
So,
well, with better internet, I can certainly participate this time.
Awesome.
So that's the plan.
Last time was rough.
Really rough.
Hey,
yeah.
if you watched all 2 hours of this, thanks for sticking with us, and please offer us comments on suggestions, ideas for the new show, and definitely like and comment and subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you next time right here for Andy and Rich. I'm Chris, and thanks for joining us on the Dev Talk Show.